Here we are today. Gary is starting the recording, and you want to tell us, Gary, how we're going to go from here on the rest of our meeting?
Well, we'll do this the way we always do. We'll ask everybody else to mute yourself, and if you have questions or comments, put them in the chat box and we will relay them to Gayle as they come in. And otherwise, it's all yours, Gayle.
I do like to suggest people switch. If you've got the gallery view of all of us up on your screen, you might want to switch to the speaker view so you can focus on Gayle Fleming in the great topic of happy aging. Here you go, Gayle.
So speaking of technology and using new technology, and there's a lot of sentiment around that us old folks really don't get technology. And of course, we've had to get technology. So I'm using something new today. I've never done this before. I've been on a lot of Zoom calls since we went into the world of Zoom with COVID, but I've never actually been a speaker. So today I figured out how to actually put a teleprompter on my screen so that I could talk to you and remember all the things I wanted to say. So I'm using it for the first time. So if you hear me sort of stop, just understand that this is very new technology for me. But first, let me just say thank you so much for having me. I'm very honored to get to meet and talk with you today. So I've been an activist all of my life. And, I was active as a young person in the Black Panther Party, and then I moved into the women's movement, and I was active in the environmental movement from the 70s. But at this stage in my life, my activism is really centered around spreading the word that being old is a gift, a joy, and a huge benefit to society. When I was in my 20s, I used to say, in the words of the infamous James Brown, say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud. Well, now at 74 and in my old age, I say it loud, I'm old and I'm proud. So I think one of the first things that leads to happy aging is to begin to free ourselves from the negative stereotypes that abound about aging. I'm talking about some of the unconscious biases about aging that society and we ourselves have about getting old and being old. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this a little later. So when I started to do yoga, which by the way encompasses a lot more than just the physical poses that most people associate with yoga, I actually had no idea why it had such a profound effect on me. I just knew the poses and the breathing I learned made me feel much better, more relaxed, and able to cope. That was in 1976, and I was 28 years old. It would actually be years before I began to realize and study and learn about the ancient philosophy and health systems that made up this thing that I was practicing. So I was 50 when I began teaching in 1998. I was already older than many of the students and teachers. However, back then, before yoga got co-opted into, just another exercise fad, most of the students were actually in their 40s. At the studio where I studied and later taught here in Arlington, most of the students were people who were working in some of the Washington offices and were beginning to feel the effects of sedentary life on their aging bodies. And they were stressed out. They came to class to allow their bodies and minds to move more gently and thoughtfully into shapes and to actually have their minds be able to relax. The expectation changed in the early 2000s when yoga got co-opted into something that one did to get a quote, yoga butt or a flat stomach. Now, this was never the intention of the ancient sages who shared their discoveries and teachings with the world. Simply put, the intention of yoga has always been to bring peace of mind to practitioners. It just so happens, though, that the poses or asanas, that's the Sanskrit word, also bring about a sense of physical ease and thus peace to the body. So as a 74-year-old, I do yoga every day. I do an asana practice every day. And I also meditate every day. So I can testify to both the physical and mental ease and agility that this practice brings to my life every single day. So it is the combination of breath and movement that brings about the ultimate benefits of yoga. You know, I've often been a little astounded by students who have been taking yoga classes for years, who tell me that no teacher has ever emphasized breathing as much as I do. So I want to stop here and have us actually do some breathing together and some movement together. So you can do this seated exactly where you are. And I hope you'll all feel like participating in this, because I think you'll enjoy and see the benefits immediately. So first of all, let me just say about breathing. Most people breathe about 15 to 20 times a minute. That's a lot of breaths that don't need to be taken. And when we breathe that quickly, it actually keeps the part of our brain that keeps us on kind of anxious mode, the sympathetic nervous system, active. By slowing down the breath, we can slow down mental stress and anxiety. Now, I know all of us at any age and whatever our lifestyle have to deal with stress in our lives. And most of us have actually heard the term, take a deep breath. Has anybody never heard that term, take a deep breath, when you're anxious or stressed? It turns out that that is absolutely true. The taking a deep breath actually slows down the nervous system and brings the parasympathetic nervous system back into where it should be. I'm so sorry. Somebody is calling me, and I put my phone in the other room, but I didn't put my iPad in the other room. So anyway, let's just do some breathing together. So just sit up nice and tall in your seat, wherever you are. What I'd like you to do is take your hands, put your hands together like this where your middle fingers touch, and then put them on your low belly. So what I want you to do is inhale into your belly until your fingers actually move apart. So feel your belly expand like a balloon, and then exhale until your fingers move back together again. So let's just do that a couple of times. Inhale, feel the belly expand, feel the middle fingers move apart. And then as you exhale, keep exhaling until you feel those fingers move back together again. Now, many of us, keep your hands where they are, many of us breathe from our upper chest. We breathe more from our upper chest for a lot of reasons than we do from our belly. So just starting to breathe from your belly is a big, important step. Let's do that one more time, and then we're going to move on from the belly. So inhale, feel the middle fingers move apart, and exhale until the fingers move back again. Now keep one hand on your belly, and then take another, it doesn't matter which one, and kind of put it on your side ribs, just any way that feels comfortable, so your fingers are pointed in towards your body, towards your midline of your body. And now inhale into the belly, but keep inhaling until you can feel your ribs kind of spread apart under that upper hand. And exhale until you feel the ribs kind of move back together and you feel your belly descend. Try that one more time, inhaling till the belly expands, then continue to inhale until you get all the way up to the ribs, and then exhale. Now, the last part of this, take the hand that's on your belly, keep the hand on your rib, take the hand that's on your belly and put it on your upper chest. And now we're going to really do a deep breath, because we're going to inhale from the belly until we can actually feel the upper chest lift. So start with the belly and inhale. Continue inhaling until you can actually feel your chest lift under that top hand, and then exhale and feel the breath move back down from the upper chest all the way back down to your belly. Just do that one more time with your hands in place. And exhaling, feeling the breath leave the chest, the ribs, and the belly. And then you can go ahead and release your hands. So that's what we actually call in yoga a complete 3-part yogic breath. However, the reality is that is the way we should be breathing most of the time. And it's amazing how remembering to slow your breathing down will help you to calm down mentally and physically. Now, we're going to actually put a few movements with the breath. So see if you can, as much as possible, because this is probably new to you, as much as possible, try to take those same deep breaths. But this time we're going to add a little movement. Still seated. We don't have to move from our chairs. So what I want you to do is, as you inhale, and I hope everybody can see me, as you inhale, arch your back and kind of drop your head back. So you feel your chest expand. And then as you exhale, go ahead and just round your shoulders. You can drop your head. So just back and forth. Inhale. So getting some movement in the spine, and exhale. Just a couple more times. Inhale. And exhale. And one more time. Inhale. And exhale. And then just come back to sitting up straight. So when we sit a lot, which most of us do, just that simple movement and breathing will bring some flexibility into our spine and relieve some of the tension that comes from just sitting in the same place. Now we're going to do a couple more. So you can sit with your hands just on your lap. And I just want you to drop your head over to your right. Now relax your shoulders down. So press your shoulders down away from your ears and take those same deep breaths, those big inhalations and exhalations. And you should feel a big stretch on the side, left side of your neck and shoulder. When you finish your next exhalation, you can go ahead and lift your head. Just kind of notice how that left shoulder feels now. Might feel a little lighter. And then drop your head over to the left and do the same thing. Just keep the shoulders relaxed down away from your ears and just breathe. And after the end of your next exhalation, go ahead and bring your head back up and just feel how both your shoulders feel. Now, if you tend to be tighter on one side, for women, a lot of times we carry bags on one shoulder. And so you might feel that one side was a little bit less, you could feel the sensation a little bit less and one side a little bit more. So this is how we start to become kind of really aware of our bodies. So the next one we're going to do is just shoulder rolls. So all you're going to do is
before you do, we have a question here.
Yes.
Somebody is asking, should we be breathing through our nose or our mouth?
Good question. You should always be breathing, or almost always be breathing through your nose. Breathing is much more effective when you breathe into the nostrils and it goes down into the lungs than when you breathe through your open mouth. So yes, that's a good question. And yes, you should be breathing. Now, there are some occasions when I'm teaching a class that I might have people inhale through their nose and deep exhale through their mouth, but that's very specific. So in general, yes, breathe through your nose. Anything else, Gary?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, so the next one, we're gonna do some shoulder rolls. And I'm sure everybody knows what it feels like to have tight shoulders and a tight upper back. So we're just gonna take the shoulders and just keep breathing kind of deeply. Take the shoulders up towards your ears, roll the shoulders back, drop the shoulders down, and roll the shoulders forward. So up, back, down, and forward. Up, back, down, and forward. Let's do it one more time this direction. Up, back, down, and forward. Good. And then coming back to normal. Now we're going to go the opposite direction. So we're going to go up, but back, down, and forward. Up, back, down, and forward. Up, back, down, and forward. And one more time. Up, back, down, and forward. And then coming back to just sit naturally. So the last one we're going to do is a little bit more movement. You're going to actually, I'm sitting back, hope everybody can still see me. Take your hands, again, like we started, but we're not going to put them on our bellies. We're actually going to just open up our whole chest. So as you inhale, kind of open up, take a little bit of the back bend. Exhale, let your whole torso round forward. So inhale and exhale. And inhale and exhale. And two more times. Inhale and exhale. And last time, inhale and exhale. And you can go ahead and relax your hands back down to wherever you normally would have them. So let's just take a moment now, if you'd like, and if you feel like it, you can close your eyes, or you don't have to, you can just soften your gaze. And I just want you to just take a moment and take, without the specific instructions that I gave, just take a few nice slow breaths. Just feel your breath in your body. And also feel your body sitting. So just notice what it feels like, to pay attention, to be really aware of how your body feels sitting. Good. So does anybody have any questions before I keep going about that little exercise? Any other questions, Gary?
No, the only other thing we've got is a question, there's a comment from somebody that they practiced yoga at Sun and Moon before doing seated yoga during Zoom, via COVID. And his comment is he wished he had listened to his daughter and started earlier.
So, okay, so let's talk about that before I keep going with my prepared remarks.
We do have another question. Where do you teach? Do you are you at a studio, or do you teach private lessons?
All of the above. I teach at Sun and Moon Yoga Studio. I teach 2 classes there, one on Thursdays at 5 and one on Sundays at 10. These are both all level classes, meaning that I don't, you can come at any ability, and I will always try to modify the classes to wherever people are. And so we don't do things like headstands or handstands in this class. The second question, I also teach private classes, and I do, when people really want to work on something specific, I teach private classes either in my home or theirs. And starting in September, I'm going to be teaching 3 classes for the 55 plus program for Arlington County. And one of those classes is going to be a very beginner class. So yeah, so that's, and I will mention at the end my website. If anybody wants to check out my website, they can see the kind of things that I teach. I also teach small group classes. So if there's like, I have a group of 4 women who are all seniors, anywhere from 78 down to I think 70 to 78. And I'll be teaching them privately, just the small group of 4. But, I'm sorry, I wanted to go back to the person who said he wished he'd listened to his daughter and started earlier. I firmly believe that it's never too late to start a yoga practice. And yoga is for everybody. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. So it really doesn't matter. You might, want to think about doing some private classes just for your own self, but there is no age in which you're too old to not just start yoga, but to gain a lot from yoga. So don't worry about that. So
one last comment here, somebody saying their smartwatch gives them a reminder every day to focus on their breathing. So
and that's a very smart watch. That's a very smart watch, because we often just forget to breathe. And even when I'm teaching classes, when I'm teaching a pose where people are really concentrating, for instance, a balance pose, like tree pose, where people really have to concentrate on, balancing on one foot, I often have to remind people to keep breathing. It is natural that when we're focusing our brain, it's kind of like we're putting all our energy into thinking about what we're doing. It's very natural to stop breathing. And if we're doing anything that's got us very engaged mentally, we can basically stop breathing. So you got a very smart watch. So movement, and especially movement in the parts of our bodies that aren't a part of our regular everyday movement, is essential for a body to be at ease. If you sit in a chair for an hour or so without standing up, for instance, you may feel discomfort, even pain in your knees, hips, something like that when you stand. So I had dinner with some friends recently, and one of our group, who's a regular walker, she walks several miles a day. She's pretty fit, but she's about 78. And she mentioned that, when we got up after sitting at dinner for an hour and a half or so, she was feeling quite a bit of discomfort when she finally stood up. So when we feel these changes in our bodies, we often assume that, it's simply because we're old. And it really isn't. Young people also, their bodies get stiff too when they sit. And our bodies do change. So, it's very true that our bodies change, but as the Buddhists say, change is inevitable. Nothing remains the same. So our bodies are changing from the moment we're born. And they're also aging. Most people don't realize that our entire skeletal system is rebuilt and replaced every 10 years. Our red blood cells die and are replaced every 4 months. And the surface cells of our skin are replaced every 2 weeks. So it's inevitable that our bodies change as we age, and there's nothing we can do to stop that. But we can definitely have a say in how our bodies age, how our minds age, and how our attitudes age. Yoga can help in all of these areas because it helps us to access who we truly are at a much deeper level than just the physical. So it's important to note that yoga is not something that you go to a class to do once a week and don't think about it until the next week. Yoga is a life practice, and it's a practice that makes you think about your posture when you're standing in line at the grocery store, or makes you breathe more consciously and slowly if you're stuck in traffic and getting agitated and impatient. So when most of us hear the word yoga, we only think of or know about the physical poses or asanas that have become very ubiquitous when we think of the word yoga. But asana is just one part of an 8-part system that make up the greatest benefits of yoga, and that is a mind and a body at ease. One of the most important things I want to emphasize is that yoga is for everybody. 2 words. It doesn't matter what age or what shape you're in right now. Yoga can be adapted to your abilities. Now, sadly, that's not the image of yoga that has garnered, that most people have garnered over the last 20 years or so. If you Google images of yoga, you almost always only see photos of young, skinny white women. And sadly, I have had so many older people tell me they can't do yoga because of the many images they have seen of much younger people doing poses that look really difficult. Here's the thing, all poses can be modified. All poses can be adapted. And some poses don't ever need to be done in the first place. Like, I used to do headstands and handstands. I don't do them anymore. They really don't have any benefit to my 70-year-old body at this point, so there's no real need to do them. It was really and truly when I learned to do headstand at 50 against the wall and at 55 in the center of a room, it was a big ego boost to me. That's basically what it was. There wasn't any particular reason that I absolutely had to do a headstand to get the benefit of it. So there are a lot of poses that people see that they think I could never do that. And the point is they don't really ever need to do that. So I've been working with a student who's in her late 60s. She actually was a previous student of mine. And when I had my own yoga studio back in the early 2000s. And during that time when she was my student, she actually worked for herself. She was a life coach and she had her own business, but subsequently she decided she needed a real job, as she called it. And so she went to work for the government. And so for the next nearly 20 years, she sat at a desk, at a computer all day long. So when she came to me, so she contacted me recently in the last few months and asked me if I could help her because she was really feeling a lot of pain, a lot of stiffness. She had really limited mobility in her shoulders, her back, her hips, her knees, because she literally had been sitting at a desk in her government office for years. And she had also had a series of accidents in her younger years that were now manifesting in all sorts of painful physical issues. But she came to me every week for 2 months. And at the end of those 2 months, she basically said to me, when she came to me, she could barely sit on the floor cross-legged, and she could barely get up off of the floor from a seated position. And after 2 months, she had improved so much. Her balance was better. She physically felt better. And because she physically felt better, she mentally felt better. Both her physical and mental well-being had significantly improved. But here's the key. She didn't just come to me once a week. She actually practiced at home and still practices at home for 20 to 30 minutes a day. Now that's all. That's not a lot of time, but 20 to 30 minutes a day. So I've been teaching now for over 20 years, 22 years. And what I find is that is most hardest is for me to get my students to practice at home. Now, what are some of the reasons that people don't want to practice at home or don't practice at home? Not that they don't want to, but why don't they? Sometimes they feel like they can't remember the poses, or they think, I might hurt myself if I do it wrong. Well, no yoga pose should be taught in a way that you could ever hurt yourself. Of course, people say things like, I don't remember what to do. So what I say to people is, once you have the basics down, just allow your body to tell you what you need on any given day. When I start in the morning, I lay down on the floor for about a minute and I just feel my body. I notice. Example, the other day, I decided to binge watch a television show, which meant I sat on my sofa for 7 hours. binge watching an entire series. I was so wrapped up into it, I just couldn't stop. Now, the next day, and my sofa's kind of one of those soft sofas, so I was kind of hunched down into it. I mean, I didn't feel uncomfortable at the time, but the next day, I was like, oh, I've got a weird pain in my low back and on my right side. And I immediately knew that it was because I had sat in that position for 7 hours. So when I laid down on the floor and felt that, I kind of knew what to do, to what movements my body needed to get rid of that. There wasn't terrible pain, but it was a little uncomfortable. So, that's how, when I work with students, I really try to get them to feel their own bodies and to really get to know their own bodies. This is what yoga teaches us, awareness. So one question that people always have, and it's a really valid one, is how do I find the right teacher and what style of yoga should I do? Now, like so many things in our abundant culture, there are many flavors of yoga to choose from. And if you're young, you might be drawn towards some of these more physically active styles of yoga, like vinyasa yoga or hot yoga, where you do yoga in a room that's 103 degrees. I've never had any interest in doing yoga that was in a room 103 degrees because I really don't like hot weather. But it's not important to do yoga that is the trendy yoga to do. It's important to do the yoga that's going to work for your body. And this is a really good time to point out that yoga isn't exercise. I've had people, especially young people, be shocked when I say that, but it isn't. Yes, it has amazing physical benefits for your body, but it isn't exercise. So if you're a walker, if you do other types of physical exercise, you don't stop doing those because you're doing yoga. Yoga enhances your ability. I ride a bicycle and I also work out with weights at the gym. Yoga is what balances, the strength and aerobic exercise I do with what keeps my body really comfortable. So when I started doing yoga, there was hatha yoga. That was it. That was the only word you ever heard. But in the last 20 years, as 20-somethings, sort of began to turn yoga into this aerobic exercise, which is decidedly not what yoga is supposed to be, two kinds of yoga gained popularity. The ones I just spoke about, hot yoga, and the vinyasa yoga is where you use your breath, but you're moving, you continue to move from pose to pose to pose. You never stop to sort of settle down and let your body really feel what you're doing. So, if you're new to yoga and if you are older, finding a teacher who teaches in a way that allows your body to adjust to the different shapes in an appropriate way is what's really important. A teacher should always notice if you look uncomfortable in a pose. I've had students new to me tell me afterwards, I really like the way you walk around the room and talk to people and look at people. When I teach in a classroom, I don't sit in front of the classroom and just tell people what to do or show people what to do. I literally get them into the pose and then I walk around and kind of give them cues if I think that they can, do the pose a little bit in a way that's going to make them more comfortable. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about, online yoga, YouTube yoga classes, or even Zoom classes. I tried doing Zoom classes for a while. And I have to admit, I did not actually enjoy it because I also did what was called a hybrid class. I had my students in front of me, and then I had these other classes on a screen in front of me. So I had students in the room and students on a screen. And what I found was that I had to keep focusing on the screen and I couldn't pay attention to my students who were in front of me in the classroom. So I basically, last session, decided I'm only teaching in-person classes. Now, I may revisit that later and I may, teach a strictly Zoom class. That might be something I would do, but I didn't like the hybrid stuff. So, sorry.
We're about 10 minutes to 11.
Okay, sounds good. I'll be
If
finished
we
in a
run a
minute.
little late, it's fine.
Okay. So the bottom line is, if you don't feel good when you leave a yoga class, it's not the right class. Yoga is not a no pain, no gain endeavor. So I'm sure you've all seen, and this is the last part of what I want to talk about, is not so much yoga, but this idea of, happy or healthy aging. I'm sure you've all seen the many recipes for healthy aging that abound. And absolutely, a healthy diet, exercise, physical and mental are so important. But it's my contention that developing a sense of happy aging comes first. Because unless we have a joyful appreciation for getting old, we're less likely to engage in those healthy habits wholeheartedly. Yoga doesn't just offer movement that makes you feel physically more vibrant and alive. The mindful aspects of yoga offers an inner sense of joy and mental clarity. A joyful appreciation of aging is difficult in a society that bombards us with stereotypes about being old. And these stereotypes don't just come from the younger generation. We perpetrate them ourselves. I saw a meme on Facebook, on someone's Facebook page recently, and there were so many like emojis and comments of agreement. And I was really disappointed. And here's what the meme said. There is no doubt that old age is a journey into a foreign country, so that one is constantly astonished by what is not possible or what is different from anything that has gone before. Now, the subtle ageism in this meme is really easy to miss. It sounds kind of clever and true, but I totally disagree with the sentiments and said so in my comment to this person. First, traveling to a foreign country is a great experience at any age, right? And we learn a lot of new things. And second, I am constantly astonished by what is possible, not by what isn't. As I said earlier, change is inevitable, and it's also good. Our bodies are not betraying us simply because they're aging and changing. I don't do some of the more complicated, difficult poses, as I said earlier, that I did when I was younger. I don't need to. So the last thing I want to mention is a book that I would highly recommend you all get and read. It is such an important book for those of, not just for us as older people, but for the younger people in our lives as well. And the book is called Breaking the Age Code by Becca Levy. She's a social psychologist and a gerontologist at Harvard. And she has dedicated her career to studying what it means to be old, and has come to the conclusion that the biggest enemy of happy, healthy aging is the attitude that you have about aging. Reading this book, I realized that many age stereotypes that I have bought into without realizing it myself. Let's face it, we all stereotype all kinds of people. It's a function of our brains. But when we realize that we are negatively stereotyping a group, including ourselves, we try to change our opinions. As Maya Angelou said, when we know better, we do better. So this is the last thing I want to say. This is a quote from Professor Levy. I found out that the single most important factor in determining longevity, more important than gender, income, social background, loneliness, or functional health, is how people thought about and approached the idea of old age. Age beliefs, it turns out, can steal or add nearly 8 years to your life, end quote. Yoga is a good way to build resilient and positive attitudes about getting and being old. This is where the mindfulness benefits of yoga can help to reshape the negative thoughts and feelings that we have about getting old. Because ageism is so prevalent in our society, and because older people don't control the narrative, it's up to us to change how we view age, and then to model our positive age beliefs for everyone else, young people and other old people. Many of my yoga students are much younger than me, and a lot are nearer to my age. So I get to model what happy aging looks like on a regular basis. So thank you so much. And I really enjoyed this, and let me know if you have any other questions.
we do have one comment. Said, how about that oldest yoga teacher, Tao Porchon Lynch, who died at age 101? Never too late.
Never too late. Tao is a very good example of somebody that did not only yoga, but ballroom dancing until she was nearly 100 years old. Yep. So absolutely, Tao is a good role model for everybody.
So we've got a few other comments here. I drive some of our members and their situations are sometimes very difficult depending on their physical health. Do you have any helpful suggestions?
So as I said, yoga is for everybody. And even people, I have an aunt, she did pass away at nearly I think she was 97 when she passed away. But when she stopped being able to walk, I was able to teach her, poses that she can do just with her upper body. There's always a way to adapt anybody's physical condition. I've even seen people who, have lost limbs. Yoga can be adapted to just about anything. So my helpful suggestion would be to find someone who is willing to work with a person who has limitations.
We have another comment here that some of our activities are intentionally located in public spaces, like our board game days, Tai Chi, Bocce, our happy hour, so that we older people are more visible in the community.
Well, this is interesting because Becca Levy, the woman who wrote the book I mentioned, she studied in Japan for a while, and she studied old age in Japan. And one of the things she talks about in her book is seeing exactly what you're talking about, seeing old Japanese people out in the world doing exercises out in the world, old men and old women. And in fact, in Japan, there's actually a holiday, and I meant to write the name down because I've forgotten it, but it's in the book. There's actually a national holiday that celebrates old people, and everybody gets off work, and by train, plane, car, or however, you go to visit your old relatives. So yes, visibility is important, absolutely.
And we've got a couple of comments. Thank you so much. You recharged my batteries. Great presentation. Thank you. And I will echo both of those. This was a lot of fun.
Well, I enjoyed it, and I hope to see you guys at some of the activities. I wish I had known about the one yesterday, but I didn't, so next time.
Well, Gayle, we really are all feeling so recharged. I'm about ready to go outdoors and enjoy a beautiful day.
Good.
And I am going to start thinking about my breathing a little bit more, I think. And you've just given us so much today to think about. We hope that you're going to volunteer with ANV, and we'll see you in the future. Thanks, Marie, for hooking us up, and we'll see everybody next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you next time.
Bye.